General anatomy, the figure 1.18 is showing the components of the central and peripheral nervous systems, that is the brain, spinal cord, spinal nerves and the plexus. Here, so you can see the on the left side the spinal nerves, that is cervical nerves 8 pairs, thoracic nerves 12 pairs and lumbar nerves 5 pairs, sacral nerves 5 pairs and the coccygeal nerves 1 pair. And you can see the plexus, cervical plexus, brachial plexus and the lumbar plexus and sacral plexus on the right side. You can also appreciate the first cervical vertebra, that is the atlas, and the first thoracic vertebra and the first lumbar vertebra and the sacrum, right? This is the figure 1.19. A multipolar motor neuron with a connector neuron synapsing with it. The multipolar neuron showing the presynaptic neuron with the axon synapses and the postsynaptic neuron showing the cell body, nucleus, nucleus granules, axon hillock and axon and the dendrites. The figure B, section through the thoracic segment of the spinal cord with spinal roots and the posterior root ganglion. The figure B is showing the posterior root ganglion and the posterior ramus of the spinal nerve and the anterior ramus of the spinal nerve and the spinal nerve, anterior root of the spinal nerve and the posterior root of the spinal nerve, the posterior rootlets of the spinal nerve, the anterior rootlets of the spinal nerve, and the one segment of the spinal cord showing white matter and the central canal and the gray matter. The figure C showing the cross section of the thoracic segment of the spinal cord showing the roots, spinal nerve and anterior and posterior rami and their branches. You can see here the spinal cord showing the posterior root and the anterior root, the posterior root ganglion, the spinal nerve and the posterior ramus, the anterior ramus and your sensory neuron and your gray ramus, sympathetic trunk, white ramus, your lateral cutaneous branch, your muscular branches, your anterior cutaneous branches and the motor neuron, your sensory neuron. See the posterior, from posterior root there is a sensory neuron is coming, from the anterior root there is motor neuron is coming. This is the figure 1.20 showing the association between the spinal cord, spinal nerves and the sympathetic trunks. See the on the left side you can appreciate the posterior root ganglion, the spinal nerve and the anterior root. On the right side you can appreciate the posterior ramus, the anterior ramus, the gray ramus, white gray ramus, ganglion of the sympathetic trunk and the white ramus. This is of the thoracic vertebra. The figure 1.21 showing the two neurons that pass from the central to the peripheral nervous system. The figure A showing the afferent neuron that extends from the little toe to the brain. See figure A. You can see the nucleus and gracilis, medulla oblongata, posterior root ganglion and the sural nerve. Whereas in the figure B, the efferent neuron that extends from the anterior gray horn first thoracic segment of the spinal cord to a small muscle of the hand. You can see in the figure B the T1 spinal cord at the thoracic segment and the motor neuron passing through the anterior root through the ulnar nerve to the small muscle of the hand.